Cheryl from Tutoring with Cheryl. I'm the tech coach for tutors. I am with my good friend Tina McMillan from Atypical Tutors, and we are on episode 11 of our student success support group. And so we're just here talking today about real friendships for every brain. I love the title that Tina put on it. Is way better than mine, like how to make and keep friends. Tina, take a second to introduce yourself correctly because I probably messed that one up.
No pressure. Yes. Hello. Good morning or good afternoon, good evening, whoever, wherever you are and you're watching this. And you're certainly going to subscribe and share and like. So that's a given. So my name is Tina McMillan. I'm with Atypical Tutors. So I provide tutoring and behavioral consulting and reading interventions for neurodivergent students, ones with autism, with ADHD, and with dyslexia. Yeah. And I also work with typical ones too, because a lot of the strategies do carry over.
They do. And I myself am a writing, spelling interventionist, and I work with kids here locally and around the United States. And I also have students that have ADHD and autism and they're dyslexic. And so that's kind of how we met. We just met in a lineable group and hit it off. And we're on episode 11. I just really cannot believe that it's been 11.
I
I
know,
just think that's
right?
absolutely incredible. I'm going to say that we get the award for consistency.
Yes,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
think
And even like I'm terrified to do these and I just do it anyway. And it's been such an amazing experience so far. I love it.
well, I should leave the blooper at the beginning.
Yeah. Or put it,
Just leave that.
make a blooper reel.
Yeah, exactly. We have a blooper at the beginning, but we'll try to edit that out for all of you. So we are going to get started about real friendships for every brain. And I like to consider you my friend, even though
Well,
we've never met in person. We've never met in person,
nope.
but
Nope.
we meet really consistently. So our talk is really for parents to help your children learn how to make and keep friends, but maybe you want to show this to your kids as well. It wouldn't hurt an older child to sit through this because we have some really great suggestions for what you can do to make and keep friends. And so we want to talk about that this is a learned skill, just like crawling, walking, learning to eat, even sleeping patterns for some kids have to be learned skills, but adults and kids alike need to learn how to make and keep friends. So maybe you're a parent that struggles with your friendships. I know sometimes I have to really work at keeping my friends. It's not something that, okay, as an adult, you have your life that goes out in front of you and you're scheduled and all these things happen. And sometimes you have to be very intentional about making and keeping your friends. All right.
Absolutely. It does actually take work because your life changes. You have children and then suddenly you realize the friends that maybe don't have kids, you're like, not really have as much in common with them anymore. And you're meeting friends that maybe have kids, so you have shared experiences. So they evolve over time.
They do. And I think that's the one thing when my kids were growing up, I had to tell them that the friends you have now might not be the friends that you have later. And they could never really wrap their mind around it until they got about into junior high school. And then they started hanging out with a different group of friends because those friends were associated with their activities. So that is something that I'm sure will come up upon in this discussion. But Tina, I'm going to let you go ahead and start the conversation here, just talking about friendships. You can go from the notes here, the notes that you have in front of you, and then we're going to make this slideshow and a Google Doc available at the end of this conversation or in the show notes, so that if you guys want to, use it in another way, or maybe you want to have this conversation with your colleagues or other educators, parents, even with students, use it as you want. We're happy to share that out. Okay, so take it away, Tina.
Well, thank you. Sorry, I have to cough.
Well,
I'm just
and
getting over
something,
pneumonia.
yes, Tina's just getting over pneumonia. So if she starts coughing, I'll kind of take over here. But I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce this part in between your coughs.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So yeah, patient, bear with me. Yeah, it was, not fun. Anyway, so friendship. So everybody knows to some extent what friendships means. And this is kind of a bit more technical definition of it. So definitely crucial. And for everyone, to start as a child to create those social and emotional relationships and develop those skills. Because not every kid picks up on them. Like I wouldn't say most, some kids do. just, they'll hang out with they'll see their parents' relationships, they'll see maybe their older siblings' relationships, and they'll see, oh, that's what you do. But not every kid has those skills, that they can actually adapt so quickly. So like you said before, they a lot of times they need to be taught because they're kind of they're hidden sometimes. There's a thing called hidden rules. So sometimes you don't really know what the rules are when you walk into a situation. It's good to have a guidebook, which I wish came with kids, but they don't come with a guidebook, unfortunately.
You're right. You're right.
And then some of the skills are cooperation, having empathy, which is very important, and kind of putting yourself in someone else's shoes and kind of thinking, well, how would I react in that situation? That gives you a better understanding as to how to make you understand how the other person is reacting and how to resolve any conflicts, which is, could be something small like, hey, that's my ball. That's my ball. Oh, prove it. Is your name on it? Like, when I was a kid, it'd be like, what is your name on it? And I used to hate that. I put my name on everything. That's just me. That's my own personal issue. That's how I resolve that conflict. So learning how to do that, and that's a lifelong skill. There's always going to be conflict. I'm sorry to say, you're always going to have conflict, I'm afraid. And the parents are the
Well,
first person, the first adult in that child's life to help them walk through, because chances are they've gone through a lot of this stuff already. They may not remember all of it, but they did actually go through it and they survived to tell the tale. So, and then we've got an outline as well, talking about ways that you can actually help your children make friends, and know that, and let them know that they can come to you, for advice, and because you've been there. You weren't born as an adult. You started off as a kid just like them, went through all those things. Because a lot of kids don't think that. They figure, oh, you've always been this grown up. You were never a kid. What are you talking about? So
I agree with you. And as you were going through and mentioning that, it's the parents that, probably their first friend, but also siblings are your first friend. And learning how to just play at home first is really important. And I'm sure we're going to talk about all this in deep detail as we go through. But step one would be to create or cultivate those social skills. And that foundation of any friendship um, lies in those positive interactions that we have. It's so important to teach our children how to interact with others. Like you said, there's those hidden rules that maybe they don't know. And if there's lots of arguments going on all the time at home and the kids are always arguing, and then there's never really any resolution to whatever that argument over the toy is, then when they go someplace else, those skills transfer to that next situation. So we want to set our kids up for success. So we want to teach and model empathy and perspective taking. So we want to help our children understand and share their feelings with others. So let's say, the two kids are fighting over whatever that toy is, teaching them to take turns, talking about how they feel when they didn't get their turn. Like, I wanted it now, and no, I wanted it now. Well, we're going to take turns. We can set a timer if we have to, or you play with this toy right now. You play with this toy right now, and then you guys can mix it up later. But books can really help children. And when we talk about children's literature, and because you and I both teach reading, there's some great books that are out there. So as you're sitting down, and hopefully you have a routine at night or maybe during the day where you're either reading a book or watching a movie together, ask questions like, how do you think that made that character feel? What do you think they might be thinking? And when our students can, or our children, excuse me, when our children can think through the eyes of another character, even if it's not another person, that helps them to build that empathy and then model these interactions. So if like something didn't go well at home, say, well, let's try that again. Let's, do you think it might go better if you would try it this way? And along the lines, I was kind of looking for some books that might support this. And these are some classics. I didn't put the authors' names down, but Frog and Toad are friends is just that classic story. Just, being a friend and being a friend to somebody else. Enemy Pie is really a story about a boy who totally misunderstood what another student in his class or a friend was going through. Didn't think that they would be friends, and the parents kind of tricked them into being friends. And it's a cute little story. I'm not familiar with this one, How to Spot a Best Friend. I did look that one up, and I've seen the title, The Invisible Boy, and I'm not familiar with that one either. They may or may not work for your family. These are suggestions. If we ever suggest a book for you, we want you to look at the book through your eyes, your child's eyes. Read the book in advance before you share it with your child. It might not be the best book for your child, but these are just some ideas. I'm going to let you chime in here. Anything that stood out here about understanding feelings, sharing feelings, talking about characters' feelings that maybe I missed or you want to add to?
You covered a lot. I had thought, but then I was gone, unfortunately, which happens to me. Sometimes I walk to the fridge and I have no idea why I did that. So that's just a me thing. Um, Definitely, I like the perspective taking, putting yourself in. I always like the analogy of putting yourself in someone else's shoes, because I've done an activity where I've actually had the kids put on their sibling and their parents' shoes and then answer questions from their point of view. And it's really fun, actually, what comes up. And oh, I know what it was. I thought I had a student who didn't quite understand the whole idea of, if they had a someone come to their house for a play date, that they would dictate everything that they would do. You know what I mean? And I had to sit down with them and say, you know what? Not everybody wants to do the same thing that you want to do at that time. Just like if you go to their house, do you always want to do what they want to do? Nope. Well, works both ways. So you got to be a bit more flexible and kind of understand, or maybe ask the question, hey, what do you want to do? I kind of want to do this. What do you think about that? You know what I mean? Kind of make them be a bit more pragmatic. And that's a skill that they need to be taught as well.
I agree with that. And then be learning how to share their toys. A lot of kids are really they don't want to share their toys. And so just learning that. And I've got some kiddos that I'll ask, "Hey, what'd you do this weekend?" And they always say that they're playing with their family members, which is great. But I really try to encourage them to just invite somebody over or meet a friend somewhere if you don't want them at your house,
Mhm.
because we have to learn. Okay, the best form of learning is playtime, in my opinion. Okay. So if you really want your child to learn how to play with other kids, you have to take them someplace where they can learn to play with other kids. So taking them to the library where they might interact with a completely different stranger, or going to the playground, or going to the swimming pool, or I'm trying to think of other places where you can take them to play, but take them someplace where maybe it'd be more fun to play in that area with somebody, and then teaching them how to invite that other child to come over and interact with them, and sharing this space. So they don't always have to come to your house, but giving them opportunities to play with others. And don't do this mistake where your child never has anybody come over, and then you think you're going to invite the whole class to come over to your house for a big party. That's a terrible idea, because you're not setting your child up for success. So taking little steps and having a friend or two at a time come over for short periods, I think, is a really great first step.
Right. And to add to the sharing part, I just thought of something that I had a student too who had a problem sharing. So what we did is we set aside, or put away the toys that were definitely off limits for sharing. They didn't want anyone touching them. Okay, but we put those away. So then that's not even an option, and only leave out the things that they were willing to share. And that's there. Like that puts them in control. Gives them some, not say power, but you know what I mean? Like they do have control over their own things. And that, I think that really helped a lot.
Well, and you don't necessarily want everybody coming into your kitchen and using everything, right? Like if you're hosting, you're like, oh, I don't really want them to get into there. So if you put limitations on it, I think that's great. And these are, again, some more suggestions on here. Um, Game nights, family game nights, just learning to play with your family, going on those play dates like I was talking about. And then you added even when doing chores together. And I like that because it's taking turns, it's taking responsibility, it's learning respect. and not maybe arguing about something. And that's a big thing in the classroom right now. I can say that. I mean, I've been out for a while, but from my previous experiences, some kids just struggle in general with just being respectful. And so teaching our kids how to speak in a nice, kind tone, sometimes they don't realize that what they're saying or how they're saying it, maybe it isn't the what they said, it was the how they said it. And so we really want to encourage, tone as well. Okay,
Right.
so we've got, oh, yes. Did you want to add anything else to that? My
Oh,
apologies.
I could just throw in, there's a thing called stop and think, or stop, think, and go, where you stop for a second, think about what you really want to say, and then you say it rather than going bleh. Kind of a thing. So that's a great skill for kids to learn. And it's really challenging, even for adults, to stop and think, you know what I mean? Because sometimes we just want to say whatever's on our mind, but sometimes we have to stop and think, well, how is that going to be received? Is that really how I want it to be received?
Yeah, and that's that empathy part,
Yeah.
or putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. So we're talking about developing communication and listening skills. So we want to encourage your child to express their thoughts and feelings. Oh, there's that word, respectfully, and to listen attentively when others are speaking. That is a big, big skill, and it's a hard skill for kids to learn. But if you start early, like early, it's a lot easier than waiting until they're 4 or 5 and you're sending them to preschool or kindergarten. So my suggestion would be to start this much sooner than what you think they're going to need it.
And you
And
do that
then
by modeling. You model the behavior that you want to see out of your children. They see you doing it. They're going to have a better understanding as to why you're doing it, and they can see the results of what you're doing right away.
absolutely, I completely agree with that. And then practice that active listening by summarizing. So teach your kids how to do this, and you can do this with your child. So you're feeling frustrated because, so you've listened to them. They're, oh, I don't want to go to, whatever it happens to be. Okay, you're upset. I hear you. You're upset because we have to clean up and it's your bedtime routine and it's time for bed. But we're going to do it again tomorrow, or we're going to go read a story now. So we're going to clean this up so that we can go do this. I mean, that's just a simple idea, but that teach them how to express their feelings. Sometimes they won't know, and you can kind of talk them through it. But when they learn it at home, then they can do it in other places. And that's really, we really want to have kind kids, right? And so for them to be kind, we have to model it. We have to teach them how to do it.
Right, and giving them and labeling their emotions. So when they're showing an emotion or a feeling, label it for them, because they, like you said, they don't really know how to express it. So you can just say, well, remember you did this and this and this. Oh, I think you were feeling this, or I think it looked to me like you were feeling that, and I've had that feeling too. Remember when I did that? That's how I was feeling. So then they will get to recognize, like, over time. It's a lot of practice. It's a huge skill to learn. So it's going to take practice, so they can start learning how to label their feelings and understanding, not just I'm happy or I'm sad. There's lots more
Yeah,
in
and
there.
those great posters, we've shared some of those posters before. Just you can buy posters and you can get the feelings and the emotions. And okay, so this is what frustrated looks like. This is what sad looks like. This is what puzzled looks like, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, and scared and confused, and yeah, all those things. Yeah, it covers
Those
everything.
things, yeah, those things are really important. So step 2 is creating opportunities and providing support. So I've already kind of mentioned this earlier in our conversation, but kids need chances to interact with their peers. And I like this supportive environment. So you don't necessarily need to jump in and save them from everything, but facilitating. So you arrange that play date. You say, hey, let's have so and so come over and let's build with Legos. So the friend comes over and you're like, hey, we're going to play with Legos for a little bit. Let's do whatever. And then you facilitate it and you see a little argument going. You say, I noticed you're feeling frustrated. Awesome. I totally understand. Let's come up with a way to solve this problem. I would do that all the time in my classroom. And that was because there was a lot of kids that, and listen, people, I taught 5th grade the majority of the time I was in school. So even as 10 and 11-year-olds, they were struggling with this. Okay. So just helping them facilitate and talk through it's really important. But you've got your sports, you've got your clubs, you've got the arts that they can go to. Taking the kids to community events where they're going to interact with other people. Starting one-on-one play dates if your child's really shy or introverted, or maybe um, has a neurological disorder that keeps them from being able to socialize well with others, and then putting them into the group settings a little bit at a time. Don't just take them to, for their very first outing, the local library event where there's going to be 50 kids and plop them down and say, have fun.
Yes.
Never done
Run,
anything
run
like that.
away.
They're going to go hide under the table and you'd be like, where are they
Yeah.
at? Okay, I'm going to move on. Okay, so, and then coaching through those friendship challenges. And I found myself doing this all the time in the classroom where they would have a problem with another student and helping them talk their way through it. So, again, friendships are going to have those ups and downs. We have to talk through the problem, we have to brainstorm solutions, and we have to consider the other person's point of view. It can't just be what we're thinking, feeling. We have to put ourselves into the shoes of the other person, but we don't want to solve the problem for them, because when you're always solving the problem, they're always going to come to you when they have a problem. So you want to teach them the skills to get through that. And I'll bet that you probably have some examples from some students that you've worked with that you could share, or some ideas that might help parents understand some things that they could try.
Yeah, and also I wanted to add that letting them know that just because they had an argument with their friend, it doesn't mean that the friendship is over. It just means that maybe they just need a little time to think things through, or just kind of be away from you for a bit. And same with you. Maybe you need time to kind of like, oh, I can't see them today. I can't deal with them, because then that happens too. It doesn't mean that your friendship is over, that you could never going to talk to them again and for the rest of my life. Do you know what I mean? I always hear those statements, even when my kids were teenagers. It was like, oh, so having to be patient and not trying to fix their problem for them, just to pile on what you had just said too, because otherwise, like you said, they're never going to be able to solve their own problems, and they can build off that. Like, remember that time you and so had that fight, but then you kind of maybe took some time off, and then you kind of made the first step, or maybe they made the first step to kind of apologize, or can we just move on, agree to disagree, let's keep going. And then
I
it
agree.
works
I agree with you completely.
out.
And when you said that part where my friend, I'm not going to be that person's friend anymore, that was the big thing in like fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. You'd have an argument. I'm not going to be your friend anymore. Okay. Teach your children to say, you know what? I really like spending time with you, but today I think I'm going to go play with this person instead. And and hopefully the other child will be like, oh, okay, I'll go play with this person today. Let's play tomorrow. So, or, hey, would you like to come with me? I'm going to go play with this person. And then your best buddy has the choice of whether they want to stick around and play with them or not. And if we teach that form of friendship, things will be a lot easier down the line,
Right, and,
because
and
they'll
they'll
know that they
understand how
have
to,
choices.
yeah, and they'll be able to understand how they can make more friends. They don't have to just have the one that they do everything with, because then sometimes it doesn't end well. The person might be like, well, today I do want to play with someone else, but they don't want to hurt their feelings and that kind of a thing. So it lets them know that just because they're playing with that other person, it doesn't mean that they don't like them anymore. It just means they just want a bit of a change, and that's very normal.
Yes, yes, and that's something to teach in advance too. If they come home with a struggle, and you just say again, your friend has a life outside of you, and you have a life outside of your friend, and it's okay that your friend wants to spend more time with this other person. So again, just teaching those things at home. So we want to um, create an open and non-judgmental space where our children feel comfortable talking to us about their friendships. It's so important. If they don't think that they can come to you with a problem, when their problems are really big and their friends are tempting them with things like vaping or doing some other really scary things, they're not going to come to you. So we want to teach them early that you are their safe space, their safe place. And it's kind of that non-judgmental zone, if you can keep it non-judgmental, but still teaching our children what the expectations are for your household, what your, fine lines of, like, this is the yes or no line right there. You need to teach boundaries, but making sure that you're the safe place for them to come, and then listen to them. And then do that little skill of, I hear what you're saying. This is what you're saying. And making sure that you are you're repeating back how they're feeling. Like, it sounds like you're really frustrated or you're really sad about this. I can understand that. Okay, well, what do you think your next step could be? And if they can't figure out what the next step would be, you could say, well, have you considered trying this? Maybe you could try this as your next step. And then say, but what do you think? What do you think? Would that work? And you're not necessarily telling them the exact answer, but you're walking them through some ideas.
Right. And you can, a couple of things came up when you were talking. When the children are quite young, I've used stuffed animals or things like to role play the situation. Because sometimes if we externalize it, it's easier for them to come up with solutions as opposed to, oh, having it all on them. They can just say, well, this is so and so, and then this was so and so, and then they did this, and then they did that, and then you can talk about the whole interaction externally, so then they can kind of focus more on the problem rather than themselves. I find that
I love
helpful.
that. Yeah, especially for those younger kids, and then again for any of those neurodivergent children who really struggle with understanding emotions and picking up on those interactions that they have with people. Like, they can't read the room.
Yeah.
It's I mean, I even find that happening to myself sometimes. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, that makes sense." We all find ourselves in those situations where we just have to read the room and read the people that are around us. So we wanna foster qualities that nurture long-term friendships beyond initial connections. Certain qualities help maintain and deepen friendships over time. That's the thing. You Going to the playground once and saying that you made a new best friend when you only were playing on the swing set, that's not your new best friend. And teaching your children that you had a good time and you made a new friend is different than saying that that's my best friend. And I mean, that's really truly something that little kids, I would hear it all the time. I have a new best friend. And I'm like, oh, tell me more. Yeah, I just met them at the playground. That is wonderful. That's a new friend, isn't it? And just saying that's a new friend. But over time, they can become your best friend if you spend more time with them. So you want to discuss the importance of treating friends well. You want to be reliable. You want your friend to be reliable. And anytime you have a conflict, you want to stand up for your friend. Don't let your friends suffer at the hands of somebody else. If you're really a friend, you're going to stand up for your friend. And then again, highlighting positive behaviors when you see them in other people or you see them in stories. That's really important because we want kindness, we want respect, and we want loyalty. Those are that to me would be a best friend.
Absolutely. And it's up to us to let the child know what is a friend. Because a lot of times you'll ask them, well, what is a friend? They have no idea. They don't know.
And
Well, do you like it when you do this, or when did they like it when you did that? Oh, well, that's a good thing. Let's do that again. You know what I mean? So they just have no idea. They don't have the vocabulary and the emotional level. Sorry. To be able to understand, well, what is a friend, and how do I know if they're actually being a friend? Because sometimes, there's kids out there that have maybe not learned the greatest skills, and they might think they're being a friend when they're really not. They might be being a little manipulative. Kids never manipulative. What am I saying? That never happens, right? But the perfect kid and the best kid in the world is going to be manipulative at some point when they want something that they're not getting, right? And they're going to figure out a way to get it. But we want to encourage more positive interactions, definitely, and behaviors, so that eventually over time, because sorry, going back to another example, I have a kiddo who struggles with making friends, and I had to sit down with the parents and just say, look, we need to really work on these social skills, because he's not always going to be a kid. And then translating to be an adult, he might not have any friends being as an adult. He might struggle finding a job if he doesn't develop these skills, because he's gonna be an adult longer than he's a child. So now is our time to really help him understand how important things are that maybe he doesn't think are important, but give him examples and role play, and use any teaching moment possible So yeah.
I agree with you. And then, just teaching your kids the social skills that they need to be a friend. And one thing that I remember telling my children as they grew up is you need to be friendly to everyone, but you don't need to be a friend to everyone. There's a difference. Being
Yeah.
kind and polite and considerate is something that was always an expectation. I don't know if my kids did it 100% of the time. I wasn't with them 100% of the time. So, that's just the way it is. But you can be friendly to everyone, but you do not need to be a friend to everybody. And to me, being a friend to somebody is where you're going to stick up for them or whatever. And if somebody is being disrespectful to you and you think that they're a friend, that's not the kind of person that you want to have in your life. So teaching our kids what disrespect looks like is just as important as teaching them what respect looks like, because we don't want our children to have the wrong crowd, be in the wrong crowd for them and for your family and for your expectations. So we want them to be selective about choosing their friends so that they're happy. Because, when you're with the right people, when you're happy, right? So that's just something. And again, it comes down to parents. It comes down to what you want for your child, what your expectation is. But just having seen it myself, that's what I got to say about that.
Yeah, I've even had conversations with my kids, not very often, but I do remember it coming up where, I told them, I love you, but I don't like what you did right now. I don't like you right now. I'm not, I don't want to say impressed. I'm not pleased. I'm kind of disappointed in why you did that, but I still love you, but I'm just saying I did not like that, how you treated that person. And
Right.
we need to figure this out. So going forward, it's either going to be a good relationship or it's going to be not, maybe it's not going to be a relationship. And then let them know that if it doesn't work out, if maybe you were a friend, in September, by November, you just, decided to do other things, that's okay. It doesn't mean like you
Mhm.
said before, it's you're never going to talk to them again. You probably will, but maybe in a different capacity. And you've met three other people between September and November when you go back to school, and you found more things in common. And that's kind of part of being a friend too, is the reason you are drawn to that person is because you're thinking the same about something. You have that in common. And then you learn to realize that that is kind of an important thing to have a friend. But you might like 10 different things. So you might have 10 different friends because you like something in common with each person. Not you can't always find one person that likes everything that you like.
I love what you just said. You might have 10 different friends. That would be really good if you could have 10 different friends.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So we want to teach healthy conflict resolution, giving our kids simple strategies for resolving disagreements using I feel statements like I feel sad when this happens because I feel like whatever it happens to be. So they give this I feel statement. And then the other person can say, well, I feel angry when this happens because this is the result of that. And then maybe you can look for a compromise, coming up with something in the middle, and then teaching our kids how to role play that. And you can literally do that when their friend comes over to the house. If there's an argument, just stop them and say, hey, I hear a ruckus. I hear some noise. Can I help you through that? Let's talk about that. I want you to say how you're feeling. Why are you feeling that way? Well, how are you feeling? And why are you feeling that way? Well, what could be our next step in resolving this problem? And the kids then come up with the answer. You're not the one who's doing it, you're just helping them through it. I would use that all the time in my classroom with students who just struggled. They would just butt heads. They just were like oil and water. It wasn't that they weren't both great people. They just didn't get along. And so then I wouldn't put them together if I could help it. if I knew that. We're like, yeah, those two aren't going to work together.
Absolutely. And just to pile on to that, the I feel statements, I love those because I just recently had an older student, and he's been having a conflict with this other student, and to the point where they've both been suspended. So it's been quite serious. And that my student was saying, well, he made me feel this. He made me do this. Like, well, he didn't actually. You are in control of your emotions and your actions. So no one can make you do what you don't want to do. So, and he was quite surprised by that. He didn't expect that reaction. I said, no, he didn't make you do that. you decided to do that. So we need
Yeah.
to stop and think next time about when he does that, what is your reaction going to be? Because that's going to determine what his reaction is going to be, and you already know what that's happened in the past. So do you want to go down that road again, or do we want to make a change so that the outcome is different? Because if you don't change anything, everything's going to be the same.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're preaching to the choir. I would have those conversations with students as well. And I haven't so much in my tutoring, but I have come across some students who say, so and so really bothers me in the classroom. And I'm like, okay, have you used an I feel statement? Or have you said, hey, I can hear you. Would you mind just whispering? It would be really helpful. I mean, like just pointing those simple things out, being kind and polite, not being rude about it. Your tapping is bothering me. Would you mind, would you mind doing it on your leg instead of on your desk? Or, because some people want that noise, they need that noise or whatever, but it might bother the other person, like in the classroom. And it's just being respectful and, having those boundaries, I guess. And I think boundaries are a good thing. Maybe we don't want to be too strict with our boundaries, but we need to also empathize and be understandable with other people's feelings and emotions. So on this slide, we have promote being a good sport and inclusivity. So we want to teach our children the importance of both winning and losing gracefully. That's a tough thing. Encouraging them to be inclusive and welcoming to others, even though they might seem different than you. And this is going to foster a positive reputation. I love the fact that the word reputation is in there, and make them a more desirable friend. I would have those conversations all the time in the classroom. You are developing a reputation. What people see is your your actions. And so if they only see and hear you, but they don't know you, when you're always having this explosive reaction to everything, you're getting a reputation of somebody who's unsafe and people don't want to work with you. But you want friends, right? So we've got to learn to calm down when we don't get our way. So talking about those reputations and how you're building them. So again, to make a friend, you have to be a friend and you have to be friendly. So it's important to learn what that looks like.
Absolutely. And just like everything else, they have to be taught how to be a good sport. And that starts at home. You play games with your kids. Could be as simple as tic-tac-toe or whatever they're ready for. And then if you all of a sudden if you lose and you throw the board across the room and stomp and get out of the room, well, what do you think their reaction is going to be when they lose? They're going to copy you because they think, well, they did it. I guess that's what you're supposed to do. So
Yes, you are your child's first teacher. They will model your behavior. So if you're seeing any of your behaviors in your children, change your behaviors. Because, I would sometimes see that and I was like very, very reflective, like, oh my gosh, I kind of lost my cool there. I need to do a better job. And it's going to happen. We're Nobody out here is perfect. You and I aren't perfect. We've gone through this. We know exactly what you're feeling, the things that you're going through, and it's not easy being a parent. We're just trying to make things a little bit simpler for you. So we have some resources for you. Now, I have not read all of these books, okay? This is just a book. So you guys are going to have to just go look and see if this is a book for you. But I was looking for something that maybe parents might want. This is a resource for parents to understand the building blocks of friendships. If you're really stuck, maybe a really shy person and you just really never mastered it yourself. This could be something that could help you and your kids grow those friendships. And then there was another one called Best Friends, Worst Enemies, Understanding the Social Lives of Children. This looked a little bit more technical, but like if you're really looking for, cliques and bullying that can emerge with elementary and middle schools, even school children, even high schoolers, this could be something that could help you. Okay. Not a resource for everybody. And I haven't read it, but I found it and I thought, oh, well, it's for kindergarten through 8th grade. Maybe it's a resource that a parent's looking for and they didn't even know it existed. Again, suggestions only. I have not read these. Okay. And then another one, how to make and keep friends, tips for teenagers on life and social success. It gets harder the older they get. And this says 500 tips for middle school and high school students. I think it even went into like college. Again, you're sending your kids off into uncharted territory. They're going to be surrounded by so many different children, different lifestyles, different expectations from their home, and teaching your child what to do in the future is really important. And so if you haven't had the experiences and you don't know what to do, find a book that'll work for you. And I also know that you have an amazing Google Doc. Can I share that right
Yeah,
now?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Okay. And I love this. We will have this inside of the show notes. And I feel like there's a lot of maybe crossover here, but if there's anything, I'll just go through each page. And if there's something that you want to highlight, feel free. I'll just start scrolling. If you start talking, I'll stop. So challenges with interpreting nonverbal cues, differences in social reciprocity, varying sensory sensitivities, preference for routine and difficulty with unexpected social dynamics, focus on special interests and challenges with small talk. Ooh, I like that small talk one.
Yeah, those are specifically for the autism or the ASD brain. How that's why they struggle with making friends. And the next one is the ADHD brain, so how it differs. Difficulty with impulse control. That's the number one for sure. That's the one everyone knows. Everyone can see that right off the bat.
Right,
Challenges with sustained attention. That's definitely number two, right behind it. Struggle with social or emotional regulation. So that also overlaps with kids on the spectrum too, because a lot of times kids will have both diagnoses, ADHD and autism. So they're dealing with a whole other set of things.
right.
Executive functioning, which is problem solving, which because I know the latest research I've seen, maybe you've seen something different, that our brains aren't developed until we're 25.
Yeah,
So how do we expect kids to problem solve when their brain isn't even finished developing? We can give them everything we can, but they're still learning.
right.
And the hyperactive part of it and difficulty staying calm. So being able to find strategies that can help calm themselves when they recognize. And the first step is getting them to recognize what their body is doing and then what makes them feel better and helps them calm down, kind of a thing. There's lots of ways to do that too. And the last one is for kiddos that have dyslexia, which typically you wouldn't think of as being a behavior, but it can lead to behaviors if the frustration level gets to a point where that's the only option they have is to lash out. Like, well, I don't understand this. Nobody's helping me. Why can't I get this? Why do I feel stupid? I'm not stupid. You know what I mean? Or I feel really stupid in this, and you know what I mean? So then they get really frustrated because of that. So there's different strategies. Maybe they're better at listening to certain instructions rather than writing them down, and just being aware of that. And their self-esteem is affected because they've been told, that they don't understand, or they read something and it doesn't look like it's English. They don't understand what they're looking at. They can't read it. So then they feel, they don't feel smart, and they feel, they just want to hide, and maybe they're not getting the help that they need. So, and misunderstandings and just understanding sarcasm, which kids don't generally like sarcasm, and I get it because it's pretty negative for the most part. So I understand that they don't get it, but they're still going to be exposed to it in one way or another, either through YouTube or whatever they're watching. They're going to see it and they don't get it. And then they feel uncomfortable and they're not sure why. They're helping them understand those nuances of our language, and especially texting and emails. You don't understand the context of what the person is saying, unless it's in all caps. Well, then you kind of know, well, they're not happy, they're yelling. But still, that's a learned skill. If they didn't know that, what if they just like typing in caps and they don't understand why their friend doesn't return their text because, the friend thinks they're yelling at them, but maybe they just like that font. You know what I mean? Like, who knows? Could be so many ways to misunderstand communication. And then having dyslexia makes it even harder, so. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great resource for families, and that we will have that inside of our show notes, so they will have access to the slideshow. We'll share it as a shared file. Actually, I'll probably just say a copy file, so you guys can just copy it
Mhm.
into your own drive, and then the notes as well. And so we want to thank everybody for joining us today. And again, if you feel like your child needs some support, either one of us is happy to help. Just hop on over to our our websites. We're really easy to get a hold of. Both of us have contact forms, or you can email us or call us. And I want to thank you again for joining us. And please like, share, and subscribe, because I hope we're gonna do another year of these.
Yes.
Do you think we have another year of these in us?
I think we have so much in us that needs to come out, or we're going to go crazy.
Well, we want to thank everybody for joining us today. And as usual, you guys keep the learning going, and we will see you in episode 12. Bye bye.